Welcome everyone to a very special Friday MMA Vivisection with Victor Rodriguez here joining me to talk about KSW 39. We do not normally cover KSW shows, but with all the build-up going into this one, all the talk about the massive, they've got over 50,000 people in attendance now. They're shooting for 90. I don't know if they're going to get that. That's 40,000 more people by tomorrow. But 50,000, that still puts them in the top few attended MMA events of all time. And so we took, and looking at this fight card, we decided, we got to talk about this because it's a pretty damn fun fight card. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 title fights dotting it, and in reality, if they wanted to make a super heavyweight belt, you could have 6, and I'm not really sure what Boris Mankowski and Mamed Khalidov, it's basically just all of Poland's MMA stars together on one card for the biggest event KSW can possibly put on.
Yeah, I mean it's damn near that. I mean, the handful of fighters that are top level in Poland or in at least the surrounding region that aren't on this card, it's a shame. We did have Karl Bedorf was supposed to be on this card. Unfortunately, he was unable to make it. I believe he tore there it is. He tore his Achilles tendon, so he won't be in this event against Mikhail Kita. Oli Thompson, UFC veteran, and I believe Bellator veteran as well. He was supposed to be on this card, but that didn't happen. But we still have a damn fun card. A lot of really skilled and talented fighters here. Some not so skilled and talented, but that does not mean that these fights aren't still really big and have a lot of potential for fun. So I'm very excited for this. We do have, of course, as a reminder, there is a UFC event this Sunday, the Stockholm card. I'm not as jazzed about this, about that one as I am about this one. And it's very much worth your time. Plunk down a little money, watch this one, because I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. And if you haven't watched KSW before, probably the best production value, even more so than the UFC in some of these events. The lead up at least.
Running into that, the fight night, they're on the fight night's rising end of things, where every event feels like this massive, funky spectacle that has its own flavor, and that you're showing up and it has this really individual feel. It may not have the perfect corporate polish that a UFC event has, but it has all of the you get the glitzy, over the top, fun polish or fun presentation that makes these events stand out as individual productions.
True, and they benefit from the fact that they don't put on an event every month. It's only every couple of months that they do. But when they do, they get some really legitimate talent, and they've got some great fighters just going out there and putting everything out on the line. There's very few shitty, or at least very few boring fights, because not all of them, again, as we mentioned, not all of them are necessarily the most technical guys, but there's a hell of a lot of fun.
Well, KSW did a smart thing that a lot of MMA promotions MMA promotions, especially as they grow, seem to be unable to want to do, which is they just said, we are running a Polish MMA promotion. We are running a promotion in our country to grow as big and as strong and to capture our market as heavily as we can and play to our market as heavily as we can, rather than saying we're going to be the next major global takeover brand. And they have a lockdown on Polish MMA. I mean, there's Joanna and a couple other people like Karolina Kowalkiewicz who have gone over to the UFC, and every now and then somebody kind of shoots off. But there's also a reason that Mamed Khalidov has been a star for them for 7 years without ever going to the UFC or Strikeforce, and it's because he could make more money there than he could in the US and in bigger promotions.
This is true.
So they've definitely, it's a very focused promotion that seems to have really taken a perfect approach to creating big MMA events that serve their fans.
That's a great way to put it.
So we're going to cover the whole thing. We've got odds for most of it. And like I say, it's got a lot of fun, cool fights on it. So to jump in just right off the bat is a woman's flyweight bout, 126 pounds title bout between Ariane Lipsky and Diana Belbita.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, so here we have Lipsky, who is 8-3, Belbita, who's 8-2. Lipsky is a well, she's definitely got a Muay Thai base and background, and actually both of them have kickboxing backgrounds. The thing that's really stood out to me the most about both of them is that their ground game is essentially, if things go to the ground, we're standing right back up. There's no playing guard. There's very little of the submission attempts off the back or trying to chain one thing into the next. It's immediately, let's go right back to the bread and butter, and it served them both very well. And both of them are absolute. I'm not, their records are not necessarily, like all finishes or anything like that. But the fights that they do finish, their instincts are just so good. I'm talking about head kick finishes. I'm talking about really sharp punches. I mean, just getting into Ariane Lipsky, she fought, her last win was against Sheila Gaff, who formerly fought in the UFC. Beautiful TKO, just had her on roller skates and then finished the job on the ground. It was an excellent, excellent fight against Juliana Werner, who we saw at, it was actually an event in Brazil. And she's actually competed for KSW before, taking on Katarzyna Lubonska. And prior to that, she had been, I guess, just bouncing around on the Brazilian scene. But, man, just the way that these women fight, there's absolutely no fear. They'll take their shots. They keep waiting in. They're willing to trade no matter what. Not only that, I mean, there is a lot of technique going on until the fight sort of reaches that point where, aggression just takes over and they continue to just tee off on their opponent. And it just becomes a matter of will. So a lot to look forward to, especially when it comes to high kicks. If you're a fan of those, like I am, I mean, who isn't really? But I see a lot going on here. I see Lipsky being a little more patient and trying to play the counter game, with Diana being more pressuring a little more and just trying to close the distance as best she can. But in the end, I really got to give it to Lipsky. I think unless it ends in a decision, I really think she's going to be able to wear down Belbita and really just eventually either batter her enough in the middle or just really put that pressure against the cage and finish her with elbows. Yeah,
I'd kind of like to know what Belbita's martial arts base is. I should probably try and search that down at some point, because it doesn't seem like she doesn't seem like she's just fighting like a kickboxer. Mm-hmm. She seems like she's got some sort of funky striking martial art going.
Yeah, she probably started in karate, moved on to Muay Thai or something.
Yeah, like maybe that's it.
Because she has some of the habits that you see.
Like, yeah, she's got this very funky, like, sort of side-on way of holding her hands like this, but her kicking game is like super, super powerful. That's the thing that stands out. Like, she doesn't look like the best athlete in the world. She doesn't look like the cleanest puncher out there, but she kicks really, really fucking hard. I was watching tape on her. It's just like, damn. So that's the thing Lipsky has to really watch out for, is if she starts getting eaten up with low kicks, then things get interesting. But otherwise, Lipsky's her boxing is much cleaner. She chambers real power in her hands, and it just seems like it's going to be a straight kickboxing match where Lipsky, being the better athlete and the cleaner puncher, is probably going to get the job done for her. But it should be a fun one. These two women, they both have a long history of knocking people out, so it should be a good, quick action fight to start off the card.
A great way to start it. This is true.
Let's see. This may be one of the two fights that do not have odds, it looks like, unfortunately, which I'm not sure why, but I'm also not sure what the title is they're fighting for, because it's only, well, I guess all their title fights are only 3 5-minute rounds, but whatever. After that, there's a middleweight bout, Damian Janikowski versus Julio Gallegos. And I'm not going to say that I didn't spend a lot of time looking at this fight initially because I didn't realize what the big deal, like, it was a 0-0 guy against an 8-7 34-year-old from the States. I was like, well, why? Like, I don't know what this fight is. I don't really care. But turns out Janikowski is a really, really fantastic wrestler for Poland, like national team wrestler, Olympian medalist. I think let me see. He got, what was it? Damn it. He got bronze in the 2012 Olympics in Greco-Roman. So, a world champion caliber wrestler. And this is his pro debut. There's not any fight footage out there on him. He doesn't have an amateur record or anything like that. He's just jumping straight in with this pro bout, and it looks like they've got a set-up fight for him to win.
Damn, Poland, you ruthless. Listen, here's a guy, all right, and Janikowski, you have said absolutely everything that is correct and true about his background and his abilities as an athlete. All right. So, I mean, obviously there's not really much out there. There's nothing really for us to see. I didn't even find any footage of him hitting pads or anything like that. And on the other side, you have his opponent who, other than an early win in 2009 against former Ultimate Fighter contestant and UFC fighter Haider Hassan, a TKO win, no less, over him, hasn't really had, I mean, he's had a very sort of turbulent career with 8-7 as his record. Coming off 2 consecutive losses, one to Sidney Wheeler and another one against Rodney Wallace. Just a veteran of the Tennessee, Mississippi, Southeast scene that breeds a lot of tough guys, but also has really just not great athletes. This is just a situation where a guy who's really good at throwing bombs is going to probably have a puncher's chance against a phenomenal wrestler who is, above all else, a far better athlete. And yeah, this is pretty much what it is. There's there's no need to even get into odds if there are any. So
there aren't. There are no odds on that one either. I think we got odds for everything else on the card, but those 2 fights. But you show up to see, is Janikowski going to be like a next breakout star? Is this dude going to make the transition from Olympian to MMA hot prospect?
Right, and how he does it. That's a big thing.
Because at the moment he's only 27, so it's certainly not too late for him to make a good run at it if he wants to. After that, we got a bout between Marcin Vosik and Kleber Koike Herbst. Take it away. It's a featherweight title fight.
Featherweight title fight, exactly. Kleber is a grappling phenom. I mean, this guy's just really amazing at taking that flypaper approach, similar to Damian Maia as far as clinching at all costs and then eventually working his way to, whether it's through a body lock takedown or whatever the case may be, take the guy down and start working on submissions. Pretty decent record, although he did falter at KSW 33 against Artur Savinsky in what was actually a pretty decent fight. He had a win in 2015 against Miguel Torres, who was by then very much not in his prime, I guess is the most polite way to put it. But, it's not just the way – it's not just his wins, it's the way he's winning some of these fights. I mean, I'm talking about arm triangle chokes, really good at establishing his position and not letting his opponent get out. A lot of the trickier submissions, I mean, he'll still go for the attempts, and he's a veteran of the Japanese scene through Deep and Heat, as well as the Japanese regionals. So he's definitely got that going for him, and that's fantastic. But on the other hand, you do have Vosik, who is super violent with his style. I mean, he's more than content to sit in his opponent's guard and just start elbowing them to death, but he's always finding new ways to just hit his opponent until their body just gives up. And it's not always the prettiest, it's not the flashiest, but he's usually in some way finding a position to just hammer his opponent with whatever shot he can think of. And it served him quite well. He has a win over the aforementioned Savinsky. He did have a loss against Julian Erosa in the Ultimate Fighter finale, and he did lose in the house against Saul Rogers. Eventually, actually, he beat David Tamor and Tom Galicchio while he was on that season as well. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, he beat Jamil Chan. So he beat three people. He had 3 wins in the Ultimate Fighter house against really legitimate opposition. He had a win against Arnold Allen and Cage Warriors. I mean, this guy is very, very legit, and he is someone that you should definitely have your eye on. Crisp boxing, again, technique starts to fade a little because he starts getting a little wild, but he's got really great instincts at knowing where to be and how to stay out of trouble. I got to wonder how he's going to deal with this high-level grappling, but if he can at least prevent the clinch from happening, then Earps is going to be in a hell of a lot of trouble. So I'm going to go with Marcin on this one.
See, I don't think I can't trust Marcin Vosik to keep a fight like standing, and to keep a fight where he to keep a fight off the ground. I think he could definitely. I mean, Kavalik Erb's striking is no great shakes.
No,
he's wild and unstructured, and will just kind of run at people. But to date, he's had a fantastic chin, and he's never been knocked out in going on 25, 26 fights now.
Yeah,
and he is also, for a guy, what you want to see out of a guy who's got his incredible jiu-jitsu ability is that he's totally fearless about striking with people. It's not the Damian Maia sort of cautious approach of like, work, or where he had the disconnect of K1 Maia, or now the more cautious, like, I'm just going to try and find an opportunity to dive in and get a takedown. Herbst is more the like, I will go after you and make you have to engage with me so that you either try to take me down or I'm swarming all over you. And Vosik, for all of his, Polish zombie love and all that side of him, is not a knockout artist.
No.
Like, this is not a dude out there sleeping people. You look at most of his finishes are submissions. He's a dude who, he wants to rough you up. He wants to get in there, make the fight messy, make things difficult for you, and then put the grind on you because he's got great cardio and he's just relentless. But as we saw in his loss to Julian Erosa, he's also not the best athlete out there. Like, he's not a dude who's just going to, like, absolutely take over with his incredible speed and athleticism. And I think if he starts tangling with Kavalik Erbst and starts making those fights, like, a scrambly mess, he can't keep up with that.
Yeah, by that same token, though, I don't really trust Erbst and his athleticism. I mean, he's not a very dynamic athlete.
But he's a super fucking dynamic grappler.
As a grappler, yeah. He's an excellent grappling shape.
He's way more dynamic than Vosik on the ground. Well, and if Vosik can't keep the fight standing or can't keep Erbst from getting a back take or a drag, then that athleticism, my feeling is that Vosik's athleticism isn't enough to just stop that. I
see that.
I don't know. If Vosik was a great knockout artist who was good at keeping distance, I would have a lot more faith in him here. But that Erosa fight kind of sticks with me. Vosik is the favorite on this, opening at these odds just opened, so he's favorite minus 180 area. Kavalik Erbst plus 145 to 150. So no props on any of this, so I'm not gonna even try.
No, there's no need for that.
Yeah. All right, that brings us to to a light heavyweight bout. Lucas Yurovski versus Ramiri Sokaju. Ramutieri Sokaju. Sorry.
No, yeah, I'm sure he won't mind.
But man, this is a weird ass fight. Like, part of me doesn't even want to talk about it. But Yurovski is Yurovski hasn't fought in 5 years, and Sokoudjou fights like he has literally learned nothing since making his debut in, or since like
back then,
fighting
yeah.
Glover Teixeira in 2006.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Like,
sounds
I was
just about
watching
right.
tape of Sokoudjou fighting, and I realized, like, I don't think he thinks about anything more than whatever, like, he's about to do. There's no plan for the future. It's like, I'm gonna throw this dude on his face, and he'll do that, and then immediately get caught in like an arm bar, and it's just like, you had no plan for how the rest of anything beyond that throw was gonna go at all.
I'm not even sure he thinks that far, because for all of his judo accolades, and make no mistake, he is by all accounts a phenomenal judoka. It seems like everyone knows this except him. You see in a lot of his fights, and even in the fights that he wins, he seems to abandon his judo altogether. And I get it. Look, you want to remain unpredictable, I guess. But I mean, if you can at least create new opportunities to use your base skill set. I mean, we've seen even fighters like Hector Lombard fall to this. Like, what was that fight against? I think it was the Yushin Okami fight, was it? Where like it wasn't until the third round that he started trying to throw him, and you go, well, where was that about last 10, 12 minutes of this? I'm not understanding what your approach to fighting is, and it's just really sad when you add that to how badly he's been losing some of his fights. It's not the fact that he's losing; it's just how he's going out. There was a TKO against Thiago Silva not too long ago. It was November of last year. That was brutal. The fight against Tomasz Narun in October, just a month prior, TKO as well. I don't know how that happened. The loss to Paul Buentello, the loss to Linton Vassell, where he just got absolutely crumpled. You feel bad for the guy. I mean, he is coming off a win, and that's nice. He had a fight in Australia in April, but
I felt bad for the guy in 2010. At this point, I figure whatever the fuck he's doing is working for him, and he's living his life. Like,
well, and I think this also speaks to why this is even happening. And I don't mean KSW, like the fact that we're even doing a Vivisection for the first time for a KSW event. The ecosystem for MMA, the landscape is now such that, and well, actually, this reminds me of something that happened on Twitter the other day. Diego Brandao knocked out a dude in, was it the Russian event? Was it at Fight Night, I think? EFN? Well, whichever event it was. It might have been ACB, but I don't remember right now.
I'm looking it up. Keep talking.
But the point is that, look, things aren't as dire for certain guys once they're not in the UFC or if they never make
Fight
it.
Nights.
So it was EFN. Okay. So, it's not that bad if either you don't make it to the UFC or you're not able, you just are unable to stay there. But at that same time, it's like, yeah, you're making a living, but, at some point, man, something's got to give. And this guy, he's been taking so much punishment at this point. I don't really know what to do. I don't really know what to – I can't –
That was my feeling on him in 2010. That was how I felt.
Right.
At this point,
right.
I'm just way past that. It's like, okay, back when you were getting, lit up by Houston Alexander, and I was like, oh man, this dude should really think about doing something else with his life. And he's obviously not gonna. So I'm just,
Well, listen.
In the meantime, I think he might beat Lucas Yurovski, who looks like a fairly mediocre athlete who has, I don't even know that he's ever competed in he's competed in a couple of 3-round bouts.
Yeah.
But most of his career is a lot of his career has been in like 2-round funky fights back in the early days of KSW, and like I say, he just hasn't fought forever. But it's a weird one. I have I'm strong feelings other than Sokoudjou can still beat some people sometimes.
Yeah, but you know what, man? I can't trust his chin, and I think if he was reckless then, like you said, now I'm just not really. And look, let's just to remind folks. Janikowski is a guy who's fought some pretty legitimate talent. He's 1-1 against Igor Pokrajic. way back in the day because he fought him in 2005 and 2006. He had a fight against Mikhail Sayats, who had fought for Bellator. That was back in 2007. Lost to Francis Carmont in 2008. Attila Vey, who he beat in KSW 11 back in 2009. And he fought way back in Musin. Yes, that was a thing for all of you young whippersnappers out there. Musin. Not just something I made up, I promise. And that was back in 2010 and what I believe was their only event. He has not fought. Actually, he's coming up on 6 years since he last fought. Actually, no, it's been 6 years because that was in March of 2011. Yep. I don't know what kind of condition he's going to come in, but I mean, what does it say that I still can't trust Sokoju to keep himself upright? You're still picking
Yurovski over Sokoju?
I'm thinking double knockout. I don't know what the fuck this is. This is just a very
all right, well, let's not spend too much time on it then. So the odds on it, Sokoju is the favorite, opening at minus 165, 170 or so. Yurovski coming in at plus 130 to 135.
Yeah, this one's going to end. Hacksaw Jim Duggan's going to make his way to the ring, beat them both over the head with that fucking stick.
All right. Then we have a feather or a lightweight title fight: Mateus Gamrot versus Norman Park. What are your thoughts on this fight?
This is delicious. I love this fight. Park, obviously, the more experienced fighter. Not always the most exciting in all of his bouts, but I mean, he is capable of putting on a really good fight. A style that's very much suited to win rounds when everything is sort of, clicking and in place. Had a bit of a rough one in the UFC, and I don't know if it was maybe the fact that, even with his record, I don't know, maybe there were just bad stylistic matchups or what, but he had a fair bit of success early and then sort of didn't do as well and ended up on the international scene again, ending up in ACB. Then his most recent effort was another decision win in Bama back in February of this year. Gamrot is not really a very patient fighter in the sense of he's not really going to be content with the decision. He does have much more urgency in his bouts. The only knock I can think of is that he doesn't have the same kind of experience. Obviously, Park has many more fights, but he's also fought and beaten better opposition than Gamrot has. And I don't know how far that takes him necessarily in this, because Gamrot is a much more dynamic athlete, to me at least. It seems like he's got more explosiveness. It seems like he's got more puts a little bit more English on his punches, and he's not afraid to shake things up with mixing up kicks and having more varied combinations. And also, he seems to have a better finishing instinct as well, whereas Park is much more content to play the waiting game for counters and sort of, really try to anticipate his opponent, sort of throw them off their rhythm. Also, I kind of like Gamrot's submission game a little more, even if he's not necessarily his record isn't riddled with submission wins, but he does have a few leg attacks, and he does show some variety in at least some of his attempts. So, God, as much as I like Gamrot, I kind of think smart money kind of has to go with Park, just because of the way he fights and how much that will favor him with the judges.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Gamrot here, and I even think Park might get robbed. The thing about Park is lately, especially as his career's gone on, even the best version of Norman Park kind of just barely beats people. Like, fighting his perfect fight, doing really, really well, he basically just kind of edges people out. And against good athletes with a varied game to go after him, he tends to lose. Like, if you can give him more than one look and you're a pretty good athlete, Norman Park these days doesn't seem to have a lot of great answers to that. He's got a good volume style, but lately in fights, he's had some trouble pulling the trigger. The biggest question for me will be, this is, I think, absolutely a fight I think that Gamrot can win depending on if he can get takedowns, because the sneaky thing about Norman Park is that his takedown defense is impossibly good. It is really fantastic. And we're talking that like Rustam Habilov had to work to get Norman Park down, you know, like
yeah, true.
And otherwise, everybody else has had tons and tons of trouble doing it. If Gamrot's takedowns, and his takedowns are very good, like he's a good, solid wrestler, but if they're not good enough, I still think he might be able to land the bigger shots on Park and sort of maybe curry some hometown favor in a very partisan environment. But it'll be a close fight if he can't get takedowns. I just don't have a lot of faith in Park's ability to really do damage to his opponents, even when he's pulling the trigger more. And I think that may be not enough to sway the judges if it looks like Gamrot's pushing the action.
That certainly makes a lot of sense. I mean, I guess if it really turns into Gamrot using more pressure, but he's really going to have to be creative to get him to the ground. So I don't know. I mean, that's going to be a very interesting thing.
His wrestling and grappling, especially like his ability to flow and like get into some funk when he can get a scramble going is fantastic. Mm-hmm. But Park's ability to shut down takedowns is also really fantastic. Like there's a point in that Paul Redmond fight he just had where Redmond like shot in on his hips and Park just sort of like leaned into him and put a hand on his face and just pushed him to the mat. And you're like, yeah, like for a dude who is not that much fun to watch, his takedown defense is way, way better than people give him credit for. Yeah. Let's see. At the moment, Gamrot is the favorite anywhere from -150 to -180. And Park, the underdog, anywhere from +110 to +132. I think this could be a fight that is just absolutely razor thin. And like I say, I can see Park getting robbed out of a decision.
After hearing your explanation for it, you know what? Yeah, I can see that happening too.
Because Gamrot, his striking's wooden, but he throws with power. He throws with a good eye to connect and home crowd, all that stuff. We'll see though. That brings us to a heavyweight bout, the first of several. Michael Kita versus Michael Andreek. And let's see. Is this me or you?
It's still you. It's still you.
Me. Okay. I thought this was going to be like these two look like heavyweight journeymen, 17-8 versus 18-6. Mm-hmm. But actually watching tape on this is going to be a heavyweight kickboxing bout between two dudes who actually are pretty technical and both can get knocked out.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And they both have actually reasonable submission games if it gets mixed up there, but they don't have a wrestling game at all, either of them. They're just going to go out and try to be kickboxers, and the first guy to shoot for a takedown and leave his neck exposed gets choked. But I think I might actually lean towards Kita. He's the lesser athlete, and both guys can absolutely get cracked. But I also feel like I feel like his striking's a little tighter. Like Andreek looks like he hits hard. He pulls the trigger well on hooks, but he also kind of only throws hooks. And I kind of wonder if Kita, being the more plodding striker, can can stalk him down and hit him clean a few times flush. Because like part of me is like, well, Kita got knocked out by DJ Linderman.
Yeah.
But I mean, Andreek has been knocked out 1, 2, 3 in 3 of his 6 losses and submitted in the other 3. So
yeah, that's
both guys, if they get hit clean by a good puncher, are likely to go to sleep. And the big, so I don't know. It's a close one. It's a fun. I expect it to be a pretty fun heavyweight fight as long as it lasts. Actually,
I would agree with that. And the thing that gets me is that, and I mean, Kita certainly has the veteran advantage here. I mean, he's pretty savvy. He's a pretty smart fighter. The problem is that his ceiling is pretty much established, and it's probably not going to get any better. He's got losses to guys like Gilbert Ivel, Rajen Yoret, who we saw in Bellator a while ago. He did beat Alexei Oleinik back in 2009 and Baga Agaev in that same year. And then, he has wins against losses 3 in a row, one against Damon Grabowski, then Dave Herman, then Konstantin Gluhov. I don't know what any of this says because they were all back in 2010, 2011. He went on to beat Rico Rodriguez and Valentine Overeem, who were never really, at that point, Rico was definitely shot, and Valentine was never super, some prodigy in MMA. Then that loss to DJ Lindemann back in 2013, which he later avenged. And now, it's like the guys that he ends up beating are just of a certain caliber. When he fights someone, steps up, and he fights someone who's a much more established and talented fighter, like his more recent fight against Karl Bedorf, who was back in 2015, or which was back in 2015. He got kicked and got ruined. I don't know, man. I don't think I can trust him. I'm falling back into the same trap. He's going to be facing someone who's younger and who maybe definitely hasn't fought or beaten better opposition. The better fighters that Andreek has actually fought were Ion Kutalaba, who that was a disqualification win. So
yeah.
I'm not going to count that. Then there's the win against Baga Agaev, who at that point in 2013, who knows what shape he was in. Then we fall into the same trap again. Konstantin Erikin in 2014, loss. As soon as he fights these other wrestler guys that are just really far better athletes than him, and there's only really the biggest name that he's beaten in the last few years has been Tim Hague, and that was July of last year. So I don't know how much stock to put into that when it comes to comparing. Obviously, look, MMA math is not usually the most reliable thing here, but I don't know, man. If you've at least lost to better guys than the other guys beaten, I kind of got to throw you a bone, and
he got knocked out by Michael Vladaric, who is the last person that Kita knocked out, or that Kita beat.
Yeah, the transitive properties of, all that shit.
So
but, yeah.
He's lost to guys that his opponent has beaten.
Yeah.
Which is it's just going to be a really close kickboxing bout with heavyweights who can get knocked out, and whoever lands the cleanest shot first is likely going to win it.
Yeah, this is going to be a headhunting thing, basically. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying
it's going to be fun as shit.
Hard. Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be, it's super hard to predict in this one. I mean, I'm going to go with Kita because he seems to me like the more reliable fighter. And,
Good choice.
I mean, Andreek seems like he probably hits harder, but he's got to land it first. I'm just not, I can't really rely on that. So,
all right. Kita he's the favorite, -150 to -145. Andreek +110 to +116 is the underdog. Brings us to a light heavyweight bout. Thomas Narun versus Marcin Vosik, I believe.
That's good enough. Yeah.
Vosik. There we go.
Yeah. There you go.
Let's see. Is this? I keep forgetting you. This is you.
David. Oh, okay. Well, cool. Yeah. This is probably another one of the fights that's really the most compelling because of the fact that it's a really good matchup, and you have the bonus of it being for a title. Vosik, who is 10-4, and Narun, who's 13-2, and both of them have fought pretty decent opposition. Again, despite not being in the UFC or Bellator or anything like that. On the one hand, you have Narun, who's fought for M1 Global. Pretty good record starting off. That early loss against Vyacheslav Vasilevsky, which was, probably a little too soon for him as far as his development. Ended up being 1-1 against Goran Relic. Eventually made his way to fighting Sokaju back in October of last year. his record doesn't say as much as actually watching him fight. Narun is really, really tough. He's super durable. Probably a little too willing to take a lot of damage that he shouldn't be taking. His head movement probably isn't where it should be, especially at this stage of his career, but he at least has decent boxing fundamentals until things start to fall off again. It's like a lot of these fighters have that same thing in common. Like, yeah, they start off pretty technical, but then, once the fireworks go off, it's like, they're just off to the races, and everything becomes a matter of who lands first. Vosik seems a lot more composed. And again, here's another guy came up through the Polish regional scene, fighting guys that were probably not as complete, but super durable, much in the mold of the fight that he has ahead of him now. So not many big names that really jump out if you look at his record right now. But still, that, again, it doesn't tell the whole story here. Vosik is just super violent. I mean, he's really good at knowing when to really get that one shot down the middle to really stagger his opponent and really do that damage when they're weakened. So I really expect a lot out of Vosik here. It won't be easy for him to put Narun away. I think he can certainly do it, but Narkun's going to probably fall back on his grappling and eventually eke out a decision based on that. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I got to go with Narun here, and I think he might be able to get the knockout, actually, just because it is kind of a sign of just how bad regional light heavyweight is. That, like, watching Narun, you're like, man, this guy's game is just a mess. It is like, I'm gonna run after you. I'm gonna like throw a few bombs at you, and the moment you try to wrestle me at all, you'll get the easiest takedown of your life, and then I'll just throw up arm bars constantly until I can stand back up. And then the moment he stands back up, it's no longer trying to place a well-timed bomb. It's, I'm just gonna run after you and try and beat you to a pulp. Like, that is his entire fight style. And it is predicated on him being big and tough and aggressive. And when he comes after people, when he decides to just start pulling the trigger, he's a pretty dang good striker at picking his shots. Like, he does a really good job at putting somebody against the fence and then finding ways around their defense, picking the right shots, getting a knee in, getting an uppercut in, being tricky so that if they're not able to see what's coming, they're gonna get caught off guard with something hard.
Yeah, for a guy that big, he fights really smart. That's the thing. Like, it doesn't, and he doesn't look it either. I mean, he's just one of those guys who is really good at using what he has to his advantage, and he keeps it relatively simple.
And on the flip side, I really like Vosik's game. I mean, he seems like a pretty capable striker, a pretty good grappler, very capable everywhere, good athlete. But he doesn't have the same finishing ability as Narun. And if he gets into this, like, Narun will make the fight a war. And if he gets into that, Narun is the dude who's much more likely to finish that fight.
That's true.
So I got to lean Narun on that one. And I think he can probably get a knockout just because he's got a great knack for it. He hits hard. And when he starts pouring it on people, he's really good at figuring out how to finish them. So should be a fun fight, though. Like, it should be a good, fun. It's like those the better of what's his name, the Terminator M1 Global Light Heavyweight Champion for a while.
Oh, was that the German guy? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
Oh Christ, what was
German
that?
guy. I can't remember his name now. Whatever. It's like his better fights where you're like, you are not a technically good fighter at all, but you are the biggest, toughest, most athletic light heavyweight out there on the regional scene. And the moment anyone can't finish you, you just turn it up and start beating them bloody. So Narun has that same feeling to me. And that brings us to the odds on that fight. Let's see. Narun is the favorite anywhere from minus 137 to minus 175. Vosik, the underdog, plus 100 to plus 135. Yeah, I don't that. I would. Narun is the kind of dude that every fight he's in, I can see him losing, but I don't think I would bet against him. Just because he seems to win every fight he's in lately too, and he's a good, powerful finisher.
Yeah.
That brings us to Pavle Rock versus Robert Berna. And
light work, we made it.
This fight, it should be mandatory that they both have to be wearing terry cloth shorts and Looney Tunes tank tops, like cut up Looney Tunes t-shirts into muscle tees, muscle tanks. Like that should be the required outfit of this.
Only if those shirts are cut up by children and they look horribly like stilted. Like it has to be like that. It has to look like an amateur job.
It has to. It has to be the kind of bodybuilding muscle tank that you saw dudes in like classic UFC, where like these little straps that just cover the nipples, and it's tanned so deeply into their skin that you can tell these dudes live in those shirts.
Yeah, that sounds fair to me. Yeah,
because this is just a fight between the most stereotypical bodybuilders at your gym who have taken every steroid under the sun and have like never even probably rarely even been like championship bodybuilders in like the sort of Pudinowski way.
No.
But just those dudes who are like too freakish to even like people, they would go into a competition and people like, what is that? Yeah, like
they're just oddly proportioned too, even for top level bodybuilders. It's very it's actually kind of fun to look at. You know, these guys even walk funny because the human body's not supposed to have that much mass on its frame.
These dudes are muscle freaks, and between them, Pavle Rock is probably the only thing even remotely close to having the ability to fight. But Robert Berna will make this the most hilarious shit show on the face of the planet. Like, did you see his fight against David Ozdoba?
Is that the one where he took him out that super wide right hand?
Yes.
The guy had like some patches or something on his.
Yes, and Ozdoba is a 42-year-old middleweight who middleweight is even generous. He's 5'11". That was his only fight, and the only reason Berna won it was via disqualification. Like, Berna looks like a giant Overland. He looks like the baby from Spirited Away.
Oh, Jesus. No. That's classic. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Someplace right there with that one. Listen, I don't even know. Look, guys, if there's any odds for this, which I doubt.
I think there are. I think I have odds for this.
Don't do it. Don't bet on this shit. Just please, just don't. I mean, this isn't going to be like it's not as bad as watching Dada 3000 fight, but or 5,000. I forget. I don't know. Maybe Kimbo knocked 2,000 points off his thing, and maybe that's why I said it. Look, it's not as bad as watching that, but it's pretty goddamn bad. But it's two super big guys. Look, you remember as a kid, you'd have that drawer, you take those two little toy trucks and you bang them the fuck together for no real reason, right? Like they never materially changed. They barely got scuffed. But this is what's going to happen now, except one of them is probably going to go to sleep. And if not, he's going to just end up, real bad.
Somebody's going to have a heart attack if somebody doesn't get knocked out.
Yeah, probably. But either way, just the sheer unpredictability of this bout and the possibility for either hilarity or probably really awesome violence, you really need to see this fight. I can't tell you who to pick on this, but I can tell you need to watch this fight because it's probably going to be pretty goddamn awesome, even if it's for the wrong reasons.
It is going to be such a hilarious shit show. So
there you go. Thank you, KSW. Yeah.
All right, that brings us to a heavyweight bout.
Oh
Marcin
God.
Rosolski. That's the last one was a super heavyweight bout. This is a heavyweight bout. Marcin Rosolski versus Fernando Rodriguez.
Don't be
And
fooled, guys. Don't be fooled by this one. Go
yeah,
ahead.
you should talk us through it.
Well, listen, just because this one is at a weight class that's much more recognized and much more, I guess, quote unquote, legitimate, it doesn't mean that this fight's going to be that much better. and look, Fernando Rodriguez, very legitimate grappler, super, just another giant dude. You're just a super big dude. Well, I mean, he's not as big as the other
like
guys.
Somebody used the bubble paint to make an MMA belt. You know?
Oh wow, they did. Wow,
it's like a craft project, a middle school craft project MMA belt.
Yeah, like they were too lazy to do the belt that they made for Manoa Man, and they just decided to do this one in paint. If you haven't, you know what?
It's a local Girl Scout troop got together and made him an MMA belt.
That's actually a very good way to put it. This is true. So Rodriguez is a great grappler. He's got good basic boxing, a nice little 1-2, and he can throw in a hook every once in a while. Rosolski is not that. He's not that good. He has won some fights based on sheer aggression and being able to land first.
On literally being able to not die against Marius Pudinowski.
Pretty much, yeah. And some of the guys that he's beaten have not necessarily been great. You got a guy who is making his pro debut. Another one was on 1-0. Got losses to Valentine Overeem, Peter Graham, and James McSweeney. I mean, guys, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Is this a good fight in the sense that this is going to be a competitive matchup? Fuck no. There's no reason whatsoever. But if you had that idea coming in, I would like to disabuse you of that notion, no matter how hard KSW tries to sell you on that idea. And I don't think they have too many pretenses of that shit being the case here right now. So I would absolutely pick Rodriguez here blindly. There's no reason for any of this to be competitive, but it will be a hell of a lot of fun. And you know what? It's interesting too, because I don't know how popular Rosolski is, but he seems to be quite favored by people over in Poland. So, he'll probably get a nice little crowd reaction out of that.
Yeah, the basic dynamics here are: can Rodriguez fight at all? If he can, he's probably going to beat Marcin Rosolski, and he can. He's still another sort of overly inflated muscle jitsu brawler who can fall all over himself trying to throw a punch and toppling his massively overstuffed pecs.
Yo,
but
what a time to be alive in this fucking sport. Hey, can you string some combinations together and throw up a triangle choke? Cool, you get to fight for our heavyweight title against this guy. Like, wait, what? Huh? No, come on, man. Fuck, that's such a low bar. God.
Rosolski is the dude who, he fights like Tim Sylvia without any of the athleticism or technique.
Yeah, so, yeah.
If you stripped, everything good out of Tim Sylvia's game...
Which wasn't much to begin with.
Yeah, you'd have Marcin Rosolski. And I don't even mean, because Tim Sylvia obviously was heavyweight champ. So you're talking about all the, boxing. You're talking about any counter wrestling, any grappling, any of that. And you're just looking at a weird skinny fat dude who will fall down and then have to go like this off of his back, but will come after you. But
he's got a lot of tattoos, though.
He's got a lot of tattoos.
Yeah.
All right. Rosolski is the underdog here, anywhere from plus 308 to plus 275. Rodriguez Jr., the favorite, minus 392 to minus 410. That is purely based on Rodriguez being not terrible.
Yes, being an actual professional fighter, full time.
All right, that brings us to the co-main event: Marius Pudinowski versus Tiberius Kavalik.
Oh, wow!
And I am looking forward to this much. The return of Pujan. I gotta, so here's the thing. Pudinowski, he is a great, fun circus object in MMA. He's still not at all a good fighter. At all. He is too heavy to move you from on top of him and athletic enough to throw fast hands while on top of somebody fighter. And then
you know what, man? Well,
turns tomato red after 5 minutes and then can't keep fighting anymore.
Yeah.
So Tiberius Kavalik is definitely another muscle-bound weird dude, but he actually looks like he's willing to scrap. Like, he can fight through some adversity. He hits hard. He mixes up his punches a little. And, I think he's the kind of dude that he'll probably get instantly tired too. And he may even end up on his back for a while, but I don't think he will go away just because Pujan is huge and coming after him. And that, as we have seen with our previous description of Marcin Rosolski, is probably enough to beat Pudinowski for me. So I am going to pick Tiberius Kavalik.
All right, let's get rid of the main component here that jumps out to anybody who's looking at this bout, and it's the fact that if you look at their professional records, Pudinowski is 10-5, whereas Kavalik is 3-0. Now, obviously, we know that records are not everything, and I gotta hand it to Pudinowski for being a guy. Because I remember watching him on ESPN during those World's Strongest Man competitions, and it was just like it was a circus thing, and it wasn't really like crazy legit sport to me, right? But I really have to respect him for going from that and recognizing that what he was doing as spectacle, was going to be a barrier for him to be able to do well in sport, especially when it's hard to punch when your arms are that big, right? Like, he doesn't really do much other than hooks. It's very hard for him to set up like a jab cross combo very well. But I got to hand it to him, man. He's probably doesn't have the best record or beaten some of the best guys, but he's put on, he's at least worked his way to be like, okay, at least he's legitimate. Even if doesn't have the best record, he's not world championship material, but he's at least worked out decently as a fighter. And there's something to
he's bad, but he's dedicated, and he's got a big enough platform to get fights that he can win.
At least he's making it happen. Like, that's the thing that for me, like, I didn't see it being a thing until it became a thing. I'm like, okay, you know what? You're putting in the work. I'm handing you that, right?
He's putting in the work, and he's rich enough and famous enough that he doesn't have to just go out there and get crushed by a bunch of actually really good fighters.
Yes, exactly. That's an excellent way of putting it. Yeah. So, all right. When we look at Kavalik's record, none of the names really stand out as fighters that anyone would really recognize. One of his wins, curiously enough, is listed as submission via head. I'm not sure if that was. I don't know if that was head pressure. I hope that's what it is.
Have you seen it?
I mean, you know what? Actually, now that I think of it, I do remember that. That was
he basically tried for a guillotine, and then the guy fell on top of him, and he still had one arm, and it just kind of choked the guy's windpipe, and the guy was tapped out immediately.
Oh boy, yeah, that's kind of what we're going to be seeing here, guys. And don't expect any guillotine attempts from Pudinowski, because I mean, getting his arm around somebody else's neck, like, really, what are we doing here? That's not going to happen. No. Pujan has fought, and he way back again. The ghost of Musin rises here. He had that loss against Tim Sylvia way back in 2010. Fought Butterbean. I don't know why that fight needed to happen. It shouldn't have. Losses. Loss and then an eventual no contest to James Thompson, a win over Bob Sapp when he was crumpling into a fetal position all the time, eventual loss to Sean McCorkle, and then he went 1-1 against McCorkle, beat Ole Thompson, beat Pavle Nastula in the twilight of his career, beat Hollis Gracie, which he was despite the name, never really made it that big in MMA. Then 2 straight losses against the aforementioned Rosolski, who we covered before, and Peter Graham, who just absolutely brutalized him. Look, I think that's when KSW realized, like, the only thing we can really do to make this interesting is have him fight similarly really big dudes and just play on that. And that's what they did by having him fight Popek in his last fight, which wasn't great, but it's big dudes, punchy face. Like, there's not that much else to this that you really need. And it's a simple enough recipe that the audience is going to eat up. And you know what? I'm there for it. It's not that big a deal. Pudinowski's cardio has always been very iffish. And I don't know if Kavalik is going to be able to really capitalize that. He's getting up there, too. He's in his 30s. He's kind of getting out there as well. So, you know what, man? I'm going to go with Pudinowski on this, and I'm not even sure why. My gut's just telling me that, like, these two dudes are just so big and they're just so unreliable and reckless. Like, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm going to go with the guy that I've seen do a little more with really very little tools at his disposal. So,
all right. Going out on a limb. I mean, it's not a limb. He's the favorite. Pudinowski's the favorite, minus 189 to minus 230. Kavalik is underdog plus 170 plus 179 plus 138-ish area. And I just, you know, I've seen Kavalik actually throw like a couple of uppercuts and stuff, and that to me is just like, that might be enough if Pudinowski's just going to run at him.
You're absolutely right, though. It might be.
That brings us to our main event: Boris Mankowski versus Mamed Khalidov. And this is a cool fight. This should be fun and interesting. Oh yeah, go after it. Talk about it, because it's your.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, if you guys have never seen either of these dudes fight before, I just really want to let you know, guys, these are two of the absolute best fighters that are not in the UFC. All right? I mean, they really, in terms of talent, you know, they are really good, really durable fighters. Mamed Khalidov alone, and we're going to get to him in a second, but him alone has been like the sort of great white whale that never and probably will never fight in the United States for any major organization. But, man, it's an absolute pleasure to watch these guys fight, and I'm glad that this matchup is made. So starting off with Mankowski a bit, I mean, he's had some fights in the past against fighters like Nico Puhaka, Peter Sabata. Just going up his record, he's fought mostly guys that have been more middle of the road, but he's really known how to blow some of them out of the water and make himself look like $1 million because he really has been leagues ahead of some of his opposition. And that's not to say that he's been fighting bums necessarily. It's just that he's been fighting guys that have had okay records, and the fact that middleweight, I mean, if you think there's a dearth of talent at middleweight here in the United States, you really need to check out the European scene, man, because they are hurting. But here's a guy who's been looking, you know, it almost makes him look worse because of the fact that he makes it look so easy. So you might be confused and you might think, okay, he's just out there crushing cans. And I can assure you that's not really what's going on here. It's just the best that you can get right now. And that's really, in some of these organizations, that's what's going to happen. He's been a mainstay for KSW. He's put on some really great performances there. Currently riding, let me see here. That's 1, 2, 3. Oh boy. All right. So he's currently on a 4-fight win streak. I'm sorry, 5 with his last. Oh no, not 5. 6. His last 2 wins being against Jesse Taylor and John McGuire. All of that between 2015 and 2016. You know, I mean, Mankowski, very durable guy, takes a lot of punishment, pretty smart with his submission defense. But I just don't know how anybody can bet against Mamed Khalidov. Here's a guy who way back in 2009, when it really meant a lot, went 1-1 against Jorge Santiago. Gave him a hell of a fight at that point. He ended up fighting a very well past his prime James Irvin and then eventually Matt Lindland in 2011. Not really much that we can derive from that there. Same can be said for some of his wins against Kendall Grove and Melvin Manhoef back in 2012 and 2013. But then he ended up fighting guys like Michael Falcao and Brett Cooper and really just put on some excellent performances there. taking on his former teammate Mikhail Materla back in 2015, what was a really dope fight that was super short, and then eventually knocking out Luke Barnett at ACB 54. That was just a couple months ago, back in March. Oh, man. Khalidov, with his really very well grounded striking game, his composure, his ability to mix things up, and his ability to just hit that switch, blitz his opponent at exactly the right time. I don't really see any way that anyone would or should reasonably bet against him on this one. So as good as Mankowski is, I see Khalidov taking this one probably sometime maybe in the second round, but it's definitely not going to be a blowout.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting fight in that one of the big dynamics at play here that you didn't mention much, but it makes this a little bit weirder, is that Mankowski is a career welterweight, and actually, I mean, he started out as a lightweight, and if he were to go into the UFC, he would probably have to be a lightweight because he's only 5'7".
Yeah, that would definitely be, yeah.
Like, he's bricked up, but he's still pretty small. And, you know, Khalidov is not the biggest middleweight the world has ever seen, but he's a standard middleweight. And so there's Mankowski, unfortunately for him, like, he's a fun sort of, you know, he's got a good sort of standard, very athletic and very powerful kickboxing style that he can use to push into the clinch a lot. But he's not like an amazing dominating striker. And he's a very powerful wrestler, but it's not like an amazing technical wrestler. A lot of the times that he's been pushed into the clinch, like you'd see against John McGuire, who is, you know, nobody's idea of the athletic specimen out there, even though he's a very good, you know, a very good, well-traveled, well-practiced martial artist. Mankowski's has a huge strength and athletic advantage. And Mankowski would push into the clinch over and over in that fight, in the first, like early in that fight, and could not get McGuire down at all.
That's not a good sign.
Yeah, like his wrestling, eventually he was able to get a waist cinch. He was able to rush McGuire behind a couple of big, sharp punches, get a waist cinch, and then slam McGuire down from side body lock. But it was not like any time that he would drive him to the fence and then have to set up a takedown, he just couldn't get anything done. And yeah, against Khalidov, that spells problems. It suggests that a lot of what makes his wrestling good is his athletic ability. And if he's not going to have a big athletic power advantage over somebody, he's probably not going to be able to get on him and ground and pound him. And cause also, too, like, he's a good submission. You know, he's a decent submission grappler. He's a good pressuring, top controlling fighter. But he's not a submission wizard. He's not a dude who's just going to be like, oh, he's on you. He's got your back and it's over. It's sort of like, well, he's going to be on top of you, dropping shots and trying to get in a mount. And if you give up position, he'll be able to like scramble and stay on you and hurt you and open something up and choke you. Khalidov is much more of the, you give an option to flow on you and he will chain and he will sweep and he will make the ground battle a world of trouble for you. Much more than he is a good striker. He's a very good flowy grappler.
Yes.
Biggest danger for Khalidov is that he can just kind of be a drifting striker where he'll just, you know, it's sort of, does he land the big, like he's a killer if he lands a big shot, like we saw against Barnett. He landed a big overhand and Barnett was wobbly and Khalidov just unloaded on him. But if he doesn't land the big shot, he can just kind of be this, you know, patient, coasty kind of not dominant, but in the fight striker. But he's cleaner and bigger and enough more technical standing and then much more technical on the ground that I don't think Mankowski is going to be able to get any of the more dominant parts of his game going.
I can see that happening. I can see him just shutting him down by just closing off one option after the next, and kind of,
Yeah.
After that, it's just a matter of,
When does he
getting
land the big shot? And if he doesn't land the big shot, does he let, if Janikowski goes for a takedown, does Khalidov pull guard, sweep him, and then get into mount and start looking for a submission?
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah.
Could be fun. I mean, the fun thing for Janikowski is that he's a very athletic fire plug. So he might be able to make this fight he might be able to force Khalidov into some fun scrambles if he can get the chance. Odds on this: Khalidov is the favorite, -278 to -290. Janikowski, the underdog, +210 to +220, or +200 to +222. So. I could see Khalidov being actually a bigger favorite than that. I would be a bit surprised if Janikowski won this.
I'd be very surprised if he won this. And that's not to say that he's not good. It's just Khalidov is just that great.
Yeah. So Janikowski being only in the -2 to 3, or Khalidov being only in the -2 to 300 range for. That's considering that you got like Fernando Rodriguez at -400 as like your Muscle Beach heavyweight, who will probably beat Marcin Rosolski, but could just as easily get knocked out by a jab. Like,
and that guy's fighting for their belt.
Yes.
God.
All right, but so all told, top to bottom, this is a fun card. Like, it is, even if some fights are predictable, there's a lot of weirdness. It should be a big high production circus. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, same.
All right, on that note, you can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSime. You can find Vic on Twitter at Vic M. Rodriguez. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com. Give this video a like over on YouTube. That's the thumbs up thing down there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM. That's where you get all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, analysis, all that good stuff. We'll be back next week with UFC 212 and all the talking to do about that. And we'll have Knuckle Up, Care Don't Care, If I Did It, Heavy Hands, Vivisection, all that good stuff. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back at you with lots more content. I'll be back with the 6th round after UFC Stockholm on Sunday. So y'all can find me then.